What is the greatest Nintendo game of all time? That might be the toughest question in all of gaming, because when it comes to Nintendo, the options aren't just good, they're legendary. You've got your Zeldas, your 3D Marios, your side-scrolling Marios, Metroid Prime, Animal Crossing, and honestly, any of them could be the right answer. That's the beauty of Nintendo's legacy. Ask 20 or 30 different fans, and you might get 20 or 30 different answers. Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, Ocarina of Time. Those are all more than fair picks. Then there's Super Mario 64, Galaxy, Odyssey. Each one is a masterclass in game design, and each one is worthy of being called the GOAT. But today, we're not talking about any of those, because there's one Nintendo title that rarely gets brought up in these conversations. But maybe it should. A game that has quietly become one of the most successful, polished, and endlessly replayable titles that Nintendo has ever released. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Today I'll be discussing what it is that makes this game so great, and seeing how it holds up against some of the holy grails of all Nintendo games. And by the end of this video, you might just see why it deserves to be in the conversation as the greatest Nintendo game ever. Okay, where do I even start with this? For starters, I'm just going to call it Mario Kart 8 most of the time, but I'm referring to Deluxe, specifically Deluxe in its final form with the Booster Course Pass. Alright, with that out of the way, let's jump right in. I imagine that most of you watching this are in the camp of having never considered this, or in thinking that calling this the greatest Nintendo game ever would be a stretch. Allow me to say, I totally get it. It's obviously all very subjective, and the definition of greatest is an entire conversation to be had on its own. While comparing it to the immersive, groundbreaking adventures from the Zelda series, or the constant innovation of 3D Marios over the years, Mario Kart 8 can look incredibly simple on the surface. But if you take a closer look at the different layers of this game, I think you'll start to see why it at least deserves to be in the conversation. Mario Kart 8 isn't just another kart racer. It isn't just another Mario spin-off. I don't even think it's just another entry in the Mario Kart series. When you break it down, I believe Mario Kart 8 is Nintendo flexing what they do best. A sweet and addictive combination of accessibility, polish, replayability, and innovation that goes beyond what I expected when I picked up my copy of this game. It launched right after the Nintendo Switch did, and alongside Breath of the Wild was at the forefront of helping Nintendo come back from the struggles of the Wii U era. When you start to boil it down, it's no secret why. Mario Kart 8 is the perfect introduction to everything the Switch is about. Out of the box, with nothing but a base Switch, you can play local multiplayer using single Joy-Cons, you can do quick pick up and play sessions, whether you're at home or on the go, and it's perfect for both, thanks to the incredibly satisfying gameplay loop that works for either 5 minutes or 5 hours. Speaking of the local multiplayer, this game's accessibility is unmatched. You can hand a single Joy-Con to someone who has never played Mario Kart before, and they can be having fun from their very first race, even if they don't win. It's not just that it's easy to control, it's designed to feel good immediately too. Nintendo's signature design philosophy shines here. Make the player feel like they're having fun from the very first second. But once you're past that first play, there's a whole world of real, legitimate depth that is expansive but remains approachable. You can figure out how to drift better, or perhaps even how to drift at all. You can figure out how to manage items. That one may seem simple, but I just realized after 8 years that if you're in first place and you have a coin in your first slot and a normal item second, to leave the coin there in case a boo steals your item. You can figure out the best builds for whatever you're trying to accomplish, from time trials to Grand Prix to online races. Mario Kart 8 has a very high skill ceiling that may not be obvious to the casual eye, but allows the game to be a favorite of both casual players and the most competitive gamers. But thanks to the antics that make Mario Kart stand out in a crowd, the skill gap doesn't ruin the experience for new players. Somehow, despite appealing to a variety of gamers, Mario Kart 8 balances the needs of both the casual and die-hard audiences, without interfering with the experience of either. And that to me is one of the biggest factors in making it an all-time great Nintendo game. But what exactly does this gameplay consist of? So far, I've thrown out a lot of buzzwords and such, and while I fully believe they are true, they don't fully explain why this game has been nothing but satisfying since I first played it. In terms of the Mario Kart franchise, this game feels like a celebration of everything great about Nintendo, on top of everything great about Mario Kart. In what felt like a groundbreaking decision that we weren't sure Nintendo would ever make, Nintendo turned Mario Kart 8 into a love letter to the company's entire legacy by including Zelda, Animal Crossing, Splatoon, F-Zero, and Excitebike Arena in what was already the best Mario Kart game ever when it launched on the Wii U. If you are a fan of these franchises, then seeing them included here is nothing short of a treat, and they included so many details to find that just makes these inclusions even better. For example, on Hyrule Circuit you collect rupees instead of coins. There's a sign of Beetle, the shopkeeper. Hi Beetle! Instead of swoops and piranha plants, you have Keese and Deku Babas. The medallions from Ocarina of Time are on these stained glass windows. Death Mountain is in the background of the track, and if you hit all 3 of these anti-gravity switches... this amount of detail is amazing! All these things combine to successfully make this Nintendo's most ambitious crossover outside of Super Smash Bros. Yet, this only covers about 5% of the game's content. Do you realize how insane that is? Already, Mario Kart 8 has a decent leg to stand on as an all-star in Nintendo's stacked library. And I haven't even mentioned Mount Wario once. That says a lot, because the track selection of Mario Kart 8 is probably the most impressive and legacy-defining feature of the title. When Super Mario Kart kickstarted the series on the Super Nintendo, it technically featured 20 courses, but they all fell within 8 different track themes, which caused them to feel very repetitive. So, while Mario Kart 64 technically had less tracks by only having 16, it fixed this problem by making them all unique. Fast forward to Mario Kart Wii, and we were pumped to have 32 tracks, including some of the best originals in the series, on top of returning favorites. 32 high-quality tracks allows Mario Kart Wii to still be incredibly replayable and fun almost 2 decades later. So imagine taking that number and tripling it to 96, because that is what Mario Kart 8 Deluxe did. I can still remember being purely shocked when they announced the Booster Course Pass was going to be released. We all thought for sure that the next time we got Mario Kart news would be for Mario Kart 9. But nope. How about we double the content size of what is already the most successful Nintendo Switch title 8 years after the base game launched. It was one of the least Nintendo-like moves ever to continue supporting a game that late into its life cycle. But even at the time of its announcement, fans unanimously knew it was a smart decision. Plus, if you pay for the Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack, you didn't even have to pay for it. It was just free content, doubling the size of your game. Due to the sheer size of the game, it almost feels redundant to start listing off the great tracks the game features from Mario Kart's history on top of its own originals. It is literally easier to name the tracks that aren't in this game as opposed to listing the ones that are. And thanks to being in gorgeous 1080p at 60 frames per second, every single track in this game looks better than it ever has before. Even for the very few tracks that are in both Mario Kart 8 and Mario Kart World, I still think you can argue that 8's look better due to some of the changes that were made to fit the open world concept of the latter. Simply put, with 48 tracks, Mario Kart 8 was already an amazing game and was pretty safely the best in series history, as evidenced by its reception and sales numbers that never really dwindled. But with 96 tracks, I believe this title evolved into one of the definitive games in Nintendo history. There are too many to mention them all, but I have to at least mention some of my faves. In no particular order, I have always been a sucker for Waluigi Pinball, and I think it's perhaps the best theme of any track they've ever done. Mount Wario that I mentioned earlier is the perfect use of the new system of having 3 unique segments instead of the traditional 3 laps around the track. Sunshine Airport is an incredible example of how simple Mario Kart tracks can still be tons of fun. Electrodrome makes great use of the anti-gravity, and I never got tired of looking at it. And finally, Nintendo 64's Rainbow Road is my favorite Rainbow Road in the series, and seeing it remastered for this game always manages to make me feel nice. I left out so many tracks that I love, but that's just the nature of the beast we're dealing with here, and I don't want to turn this into a 2-hour long video. But just real quick before I move any further, I feel like I do need to clarify why I'm adamant that Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is a better game than Mario Kart Wii before you guys grab your torches and pitchforks in the comment section. If you personally prefer Mario Kart Wii, that's totally fine. I prefer Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green to Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver, despite thinking that Heart Gold and Soul Silver are the best Pokemon games ever made to this day. So many people will swear by Melee as their favorite Smash game until the end of time because of the broken mechanics that have allowed it to be the competitive masterpiece that it is. But it's no secret that Smash Ultimate is a better game in almost every way. In that same vein, I just don't see a debate for Mario Kart Wii being better than Mario Kart 8 that doesn't heavily lean on personal experiences and nostalgia for the title, especially after the Booster Course Pass. Simply put, Mario Kart Wii is where modern Mario Kart was born, but 8 is where it grew up. Mario Kart Wii is a wildly fun and relevant title, but Mario Kart 8 is where Nintendo has perfected the formula. That's why I don't just think it stands apart from other Mario Karts, but from almost every game Nintendo has ever made. Alright, now for the toughest part. Let's finally address the Zelda in the room. I am admittedly a little Nintendo fanboy if you can't tell, so it probably doesn't come as a surprise that when I hear the term gaming masterpiece, Zelda is what comes to mind. So forgive me for playing devil's advocate by explaining why I think you can argue Mario Kart 8 over your favorite 3D Zelda. But that's what we're here to do today. The first big plus in Mario Kart's favor is the mass appeal of the title to more casual audiences, combined with its multiplayer, allowing it to be perfect in almost every setting. The same is not true for The Legend of Zelda, which means that for some people, they will never even try to play a game from the franchise because of the sheer commitment it takes to get through one of the games. If you've played any of these Zelda games, you know that while it is indeed a commitment, usually of 40 plus hours, the games usually have incredible pacing and an incredibly rewarding gameplay loop that makes it feel like time is flying by once you have your feet under you. But for some people, the idea of taking on the massive journey of a Zelda game, even if they can acknowledge how great Zelda is just too daunting. Even I will admit, I am hesitant to try to play 3D Zelda games these days, unless I know I have a lot of free evenings coming up. Because one of the worst feelings in gaming is going 2 to 3 weeks between Zelda playthroughs, starting the game back up, and being like, what am I even doing? Where do I go? Especially if you're like me and you don't use guides to help keep your journey on the right path. This will never be a problem for really any Mario Kart title, but especially for Mario Kart 8. I have gone as much as 4 to 5 months without playing it at points, and I would in fact say it is more rewarding to come back to than it is anything else. Breath of the Wild is a flawless title in my mind, but who is booting it up for a quick 20-minute play session once each weekend? To me, Zelda titles are like a 5-star restaurant on your vacation in Paris, whereas Mario Kart 8 is your favorite local restaurant you go to once or twice a month. So while they are totally different games, and while multiple 3D Zeldas are absolute 10 out of 10s, I think the lower barrier of entry, having less asked of you to fully enjoy the game, and the exponentially better replayability gives Mario Kart 8 a legitimate argument to being as good, if not better, than your pick of the lot from the Legend of Zelda series. Now let's address everyone's favorite Italian plumber. If you exclude Super Mario 3D World, which is still a fine game, I would go on the record as saying that this collection of games is the most consistently good series of games ever. Ever. There are a lot of great options, but I don't think any other series has been as genre-defining, boundary-pushing, or industry resetting as Mario's collection of 3D adventures have been throughout the years. Super Mario 64 would have seemed literally impossible just a few years before its release. Super Mario Sunshine is probably the weakest title here, but maybe the most fun to come back to due to how out of place it feels for the Mario franchise, and how the title acts as a time capsule for video games of its time period. Super Mario Galaxy put a visually stunning and innovative game on the rather gimmicky Wii, and then in my opinion managed to improve with a sequel just a few years later on the same system. Super Mario Odyssey was, to me, the biggest sign that Nintendo was fully back early into the Switch era. And as things stand right now, I think it has the best chance of being looked back at as the best Mario game. How on earth can Mario Kart 8 hold up against any of these titles? Well, it's not easy, but there are a few things I think it can hold over 3D Mario's head. Once you're done collecting moons or stars, or once you've beaten your final secret level, you're done. That's not to say you can't revisit them, but rather that it's not as encouraging nor rewarding to do so as with Mario Kart. Mario Kart is forever. It is the Mario game that never retires. I know that if you wanted to be technical, well, Tetris is more replayable than these games too. Any puzzle game is more replayable than this. More racers are more replayable than this too, blah blah blah. The difference is that none of those games can do it with as much polish and style as Mario Kart 8 does. It is a title where Nintendo showed total mastery over something they have been building for decades, and I'm not sure it could have been executed better. So yes, it may not have the emotional highs and lows of a Zelda dungeon, or the creative bursts of a new world in Mario, but zoom out for just a second. Weigh out the lasting impact, the replay value, the constant little hits of dopamine that the game provides, and I really don't think it's crazy to say Mario Kart 8 Deluxe deserves a seat at the table with the greatest Nintendo games ever. Still don't believe me? That's fine. Maybe you'll believe the people with the highest authority on the subject at hand, the big N themselves, because Nintendo has been telling us for a decade now that they themselves realize that Mario Kart 8 is an all-time great Nintendo title. I'm just not sure that most of us have been paying attention to it. Go back to its launch on the Wii U, the console that flopped so hard that it shook Nintendo to its core. Still, over half of all Wii U owners owned Mario Kart 8. The game did so well that it became the first game in the series to get additional content through DLC, and was one of the first Nintendo games overall to get this treatment. Sure, this was probably planned as a strategy for the game before its launch, but there's no doubt in my mind that Nintendo would not have planned that kind of support for the game if they didn't see how good of a game they had on their hands. I also feel the need to lay out how big of a deal it was for this to be the Nintendo Switch's Mario Kart as well. While it doubles the track selection of its Wii U version thanks to the Booster Course Pass and implemented the best battle mode in series history, which, sidebar, oh my goodness, how good does this game have to be for me to be this far into the video and just now be mentioning the incredible battle mode for the first time? Nintendo feeling confident enough in this game to carry it over to the Switch so early into its launch cycle speaks volumes about the quality of the title. On top of that, just wait until you hear the Nintendo Switch versions of the stat. For almost the entire lifetime of the Switch, half of the install base owned the game. From its launch until November 2023, it spent 78 months in the top 20 sales charts of all video games across the industry, according to IGN. If you bought a Nintendo Switch bundled with a game, or go to do so still today, there is a very strong chance that you are getting it bundled with Mario Kart. Even just last year, in Q4, the crucial holiday period for video game companies, the best-selling Nintendo game was Mario Party Jamboree, which launched in October. The second bestseller, though, come on, you know the answer. I didn't mention it when I specifically compared this game to these series, but even with 3 impressive entries in the Zelda and Mario series, it looks like as of right now, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is going to go down as the Switch game. Super Mario Bros. For the NES, Super Mario 64 for the Nintendo 64. Yeah, it's in that conversation, despite not technically being a launch title, and despite being a spin-off of Nintendo's biggest IP and brand mascot. As we stand here today, shortly after the launch of the Nintendo Switch 2, we might have the biggest advocate for Mario Kart 8's greatness sitting before us with Mario Kart World. Do you know how insane Mario Kart 8 has been, to make Nintendo go, so where can we even go next with Mario Kart? And for the response to be open world Mario Kart? Even the developers themselves acknowledged that Mario Kart 8 was so good that they felt this was the direction they needed to go for the franchise. It is also unprecedented for Nintendo to launch a console with a Mario Kart. And while it was met with some pushback from a vocal minority, yeah, I'd say it's going just fine. Not that this should be a surprise. We are now at 4 consecutive consoles going back to the Wii, where Mario Kart has been the best-selling title for the console. And I'd be surprised if the Switch 2 doesn't make it 5. Mario Kart World is most certainly far from its final state, and it's been an absolute blast. I have my critiques of the game, like I'm sure any fan of the series does, but I'm having a great time playing it, and I don't see myself putting it down anytime soon. That said, if I had to pick a game right now between World at its launch or 8 Deluxe, I think I'm still taking 8 pretty safely. If you made it this far in the video, I hope you've at least opened your mind to the idea that Mario Kart 8 belongs in this conversation. As a little reward for making it here, allow me to let you in on a secret and say that I'm really not sure myself that I think it's the best Nintendo game ever. Only that it belongs at that table. I just love playing devil's advocate for this game. Personally, I go back and forth on a few different games for my answer, but I just can't ever shake the feeling in the back of my head that it might be Mario Kart 8. It's not the flashiest game Nintendo's ever made. It's not the most ambitious game Nintendo's ever made. It's not the most important game Nintendo's ever made. But it may just be the one they got the most right. And that's why I believe that any conversation of the greatest Nintendo games ever is incomplete without giving it the proper respect. So in the future, you'll have to forgive me or anyone else who says that Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is the greatest Nintendo game of all time.